Hello, and thank you for tuning in to my latest video. As is always the case, my name, Gordon Causey. If you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, the sobriquet name handle I use is Gordy Canuck, and I will be uploading this video on Tuesday, the 2nd of June, 2025. And I know that a lot of people look to alternative sources for news, information, opinion in this confusing world that we live in, where there is a lot of distrust among a lot of people in media, in what I'll call consensus narratives. And so I wrote out a rather long winded post on my Facebook timeline, which I'm going to share now. Before I do, though, of course, as is always the case, you are welcome to like, share, subscribe, all the things that YouTube channels say to try and build the audience. But at any rate, I mean, that's ultimately up for you to decide. I would appreciate it if you would listen to the words I have to share, and then you can share your thoughts likewise in the comment field down below. So, without any further ado, who determines what is right and wrong in today's culture? In today's world, so many things seem to be a litmus test for virtue. And a pervasive media machine, and I'm talking about both the legacy media and social media spheres, they are there to program the great unwashed about how to respond to all manner of issues. And this has been around longer than the COVID era, but in my mind, 2020 certainly represented a massive escalation in the use of what I refer to as a propaganda machine. But before COVID, we had the Me Too movement. That was a big one. And it was programming the population to believe that any allegation of sexual misconduct what automatically had to be believed, and it was pretty much exclusively with men as the perpetrators and women as the victims. But then when COVID first started, I remember social media profile pics started getting frames around them to support a particular narrative or a stance. And I'm certain it was around before COVID as well. I believe there was an event that happened, a terrorist event or something happened in France, and people were changing their profile pics to show a depiction of the French flag, the red, white, and blue. And might have the words "I stand with France" on it. I even think that I myself, on my Facebook profile, I think I did change back then my profile pic to depict the French flag in behind. Uh, Although, to be honest, I completely forget what the incident was that prompted it. But with COVID, I remember that clearly. Things like you would get a little circular banner around your profile pic, and it would say things like "I'm staying home and staying safe," or "I stand with essential workers," that kind of stuff. And it was all designed, in my mind, to build consensus support for having people shelter in place and to rationalize the supporting, removing support networks from vulnerable people, or to rationalize things like having the abused locked down with their abusers. And if you obeyed the rules and just basically bowed your knee and gave in to what was presented as the consensus narrative, then you were a good person. But if you push back and if you dared to point out the obvious contradictions, then you were evil. To hell with critical thinking and discernment, just plug into the Borg mentality, the Borg collective, and you didn't even have to think. I mean, it happened as well when Russia invaded the Ukraine. It continued with profile pics suddenly backsplashed with the flag of Ukraine, Blockbuster's corporate colors. And incidentally, I am calling it the Ukraine on purpose because that is how that country was spoken of my entire life up until this war. And I also call the capital of that country Kiev, not Kev or Kiev, and it's for the same reason. The Ukrainian alphabet is different from our Latin Roman alphabet. They don't use the same letters we do. I mean, we don't call Germany Deutschland. We don't call the Netherlands Nederland. So I'm being consistent. If I ever learn to speak Ukrainian, I will endeavor to write and say the words in the proper Ukrainian language fashion. But unless or until that happens, I'll stick with the historic conventions in my own native English language. So for me, it's Kiev and it's the Ukraine. Now, does any of this make me an evil or a bad person? And in the eyes of some, I imagine it does. But then I don't care about the ignorant and unthinking mob. And that is probably overstating things. It does concern me to a degree. I like everyone. I would prefer uh, to be liked, but that preference is not sufficient to get me to shut off my brain and to go along brainlessly with nonsense and garbage. And when it comes to nonsense and garbage, for me, the apex of this insanity is this embracing of this idea that gender is simply a societal construct. It's divorced from physical and scientific reality. The propaganda in this issue has gone really into overdrive and has managed to convince a lot of idiots that mutilating healthy tissue in children that it's a good thing because they branded it as affirming and care. It's this kind of dangerous rhetoric that can be used to justify all kinds of evil. It's because we care. Why are you forcing toddlers to wear masks, dirty germ rags on their face, and they keep ripping it off and you keep putting it on? Sterile personal protective equipment is only to be worn and handled by individuals who can put it on and take it off themselves. Oh, but it's because we care. Why are you forcing the abused to be locked down with their abusers and declaring booze essential? Well, it's because we care. Why are you mutilating young bodies, ensuring that they'll never have the ability to have children? It's because we care. Why is Canada lending support to a country with a military that pays homage to Germany, to 1930s, 40s Germany and Adolf Hitler? It's because we care. How did we get here? And I believe I have at least part of the answer, and it starts with our educational system. From a very early age, we send children to school. I went to school, we all did. And there, children are taught to regurgitate what has been presented to them. And if the students do well, they are rewarded with high grades, with certificates, with awards. And if they don't, then they're morons. And it's one thing if it's something simple like arithmetic, because there is an advantage in having a population educated enough to know that 7 plus 5 equals 12. But many of the things now being taught, especially in the later grades, they're not so cut and dried a lot of the time. And I find it interesting that many of those who recognized the potential danger in, say, getting injected or themselves or their kids with a substance that was pushed through development without a long term safety profile, many who refused are people who did not go very far in our educational systems. Now, politicians, government officials, and certainly the media were more or less, in my mind, behaving like teachers in the educational system, programming the classroom, meaning us, with the proper responses in terms of questions like, are you going to get the COVID jab? Those who did well on their report cards, a lot of the time they simply followed the programming they learned in school, giving their teachers, in this case, government, media, officials, giving back the answers that were expected of them. Oh, well, of course, I'm not a moron. I know what the right answer is. You already told me the right answer, and I'm smart, and I can repeat things back. Of course, many now recognize that their teachers were not providing them with all the relevant data and information. especially with respect to the COVID jabs. And there's evidence of this fact, as far as I'm concerned, because the uptake on the latest iteration of the COVID jabs, the uptake has fallen off a cliff. Probably the only people, or by and large, the only people still staying up to date and getting one every 6 months are probably people in hospice type settings where people don't know what day of the week it is, and they might not even know what year it is. So recognizing that media outlets and other authority figures lie is nothing new. And you don't have to have been a poor student in school to recognize it. There's a famous quote that's been attributed to Mark Twain that goes something like this: if you don't read the newspapers, you are uninformed. And if you do read the newspapers, you are misinformed. And this quote came back into the spotlight, a few years back when it was spoken of when Denzel Washington said it. So, where does that leave us? Should we question authority figures over everything? Should we push back and disobey every imposed ordinance and directive? That would lead to chaos. I mean, look at, in Canada, it's pretty much universally accepted in my country and in the United States that traffic travels down the right-hand side of the road and that cars are to stop at red lights. Imagine if a significant number of people stopped following those imposed rules. There's a joke I heard many years ago about a guy in a car driven by a friend. And the car is approaching a red light, but rather than stopping it, zooms right through. And the alarmed passenger points out, and says, "This is dangerous. You got to stop." But the driver just brushes it off and says, "Oh, relax. My brother does it all the time." And this happened several more times. The driver running 3 or 4 red lights in a row, and every time the passenger, says, "This is dangerous," and every time the driver replies, "Relax. My brother does it all the time." Then the car approaches a green light, and this time the driver stops. And the passenger is like, "Why are you stopping? The light is green." And the driver says, "Oh, relax. I'm just looking for my brother." Always helps, I think, to inject a little bit of humor. Hope you like the joke. But I need to get back to the question that started my long video diatribe. Who determines what is right and wrong in today's culture? And for this, I have to fall back on biblical wisdom and my Christian faith. This is the whole story of the fall as recounted in the book of Genesis, right at the beginning, first book of the Bible, when Eve was told by the enemy, Satan, the snake, that by eating of the tree of knowledge, that she and Adam, that they'd be able to determine for themselves what is right and what is wrong, which is somewhat that's the message we're given by the culture in our postmodern world. The broader culture wants us to believe that there is no ultimate truth, no firm and fixed line between good and evil. Everything is subjective. And there are individuals within our world who have taken this directive to its logical conclusion. There are individuals with enormous wealth, power, and influence, and they want to be the arbiters of truth for the masses. Here's a question, does correlation equal causation? Famous line from science we often hear. Correlation does not necessarily equate to causation. So if we ask the masters of this world, does correlation equal causation? The answer is it depends. It depends what our masters tell us. Are we talking about the relationship between burning fossil fuels and changing climate? Well, then the answer is yes. Burning fossil fuels causes climate change. Correlation proves causation. So then what about the persistent climb that we've seen in Western developed countries that had high COVID jab uptake? They've seen an explosion, a significant rise in excess deaths ever since the jabs have rolled out. And they haven't gone down now, even now that we're in 2025, 5 years after what was presented as a pandemic. Then, in that case, we're told no, when it comes to the COVID jabs and adverse health events and deaths, well, in this case, now correlation does not prove causation. So sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Now, the second book in the Bible, book of Exodus, lays out some fairly straightforward guidelines about how to live ethically and justly in a broken world. And a quick summation might be don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. And it does come with further admonitions against even ideating about cheating and stealing. Thou shalt not covet. Something coveting is what takes place in your mind. But I bet all of us have engaged in dishonest behavior at one time or another. I know I have. And it may be that we perceive a benefit to being dishonest. I can get ahead. Or perhaps we're afraid that the truth and that being honest will bring negative consequences. Well, yeah, it's the truth, but I don't want to say it because I'll get into trouble. Which gets us to the first and what Jesus called the greatest commandment. And the greatest commandment was to love the Lord God, creator of all things, to love God with all your heart, mind, body, soul, and strength. And if we are true to that commandment, to love the Lord our God with all our mind, body, heart, soul, strength, everything, give God everything, then engaging in dishonest behavior becomes more difficult, much more difficult. In fact, it should be impossible. But if I'm honest here, it's going to get me in trouble. Well, maybe, but only with the culture, with other people. Instead, Scripture advises us to say, I will honor God and behave honestly and trust Him with the consequences. Thy will be done. It's in the Lord's Prayer. And I know it's easier said than done. And I also equally know that I have fallen short many times. It's a difficult world. And this has been long winded, I know. Uh, but I appreciate you having listened. There's so many things happening in this world where we're presented with narratives, and it can be difficult to navigate. What is truth? And a lot of times we don't, it's not cut and dried, it's not easy. And it could be over the war in Ukraine. It could be over the situation in Israel. It could be over climate change. It could be over the wildfire situation that's being presented as having a tie into climate. There are so many things, and there's such a desire among the unthinking herd to want to be on the right side. But I think the culture points us in the wrong direction by saying, look to the media, look to the authority figures, look to the government, look to politicians. They'll tell you what the right side is. And I'm here to tell you that a lot of the time, they are not pointing you in the right direction. So thank you for tuning in to my miserable, pathetic little YouTube station. You're welcome to, again, as I said at the beginning, to hit the like button, to subscribe to the channel. I'm also interested in anyone's thoughts down below. I do read them all. I respond to as many as I can. And the channel, I am endeavoring to apply something of a fixed schedule wherein I upload periodic videos such as this one here, and then on Wednesdays I go live sometime around 10 p.m. Might be a little before, might be after, in and around the 10 p.m. Eastern time mark, with a faith-based message that is live and interactive. My intention is to do one this Wednesday, touching on three themes, and the themes being justice, mercy, and grace. And then Saturdays, it's my intention to do videos in and around that same 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time frame, where kind of a recap on the news events of the past week and what's dominating what they used to call water cooler talk. So thank you for tuning in, and hope to see you back on another video, and I look forward to reading some comments down below if anyone feels like they want to chime in. God bless.